All right, fellas, time for another Q&A, so let's just jump straight into it. First question from Stephen Prica. Hi, Van. What are your thoughts of the importance of cardio in terms of physical and mental health? I like to gym around 5 times a week with 1 to 1.5 hours a session followed by a 1 hour incline walking treadmill session afterwards alongside park runs every Saturday morning, as I feel like the heart is the most important muscle in the body. Since you have a family, kids, shift work as a nurse, we know your schedule can be very busy, but have you ever thought of doing some cardio, i.e. walking, running on the side as well? Steve, man, yes, the heart is the most important muscle. Cardiovascular health is very, very important. I guess the first part of my life, from the ages of, basically 0 all the way to like 20, all I ever did was run around. Got serious with basketball around the age of 12, and all I ever did was cardio. In fact, I was a scrawny kid that could run. I was quite quick on my feet. So that was kind of my introduction to physical exercise. It was sports. It was trying to keep fit. When I started, when I stopped playing basketball, I started to think about muscle size, strength, and all that. And since then, I've kind of fallen off the bandwagon of cardio altogether. Like, I'm not interested in running marathons. I'm not interested in running at all. I've had enough cardio in my life. That's the kind of feeling I have. However, I still like the idea of cardio. I still like the idea of running. I still think about, NFL athletes, to me, they're like the pinnacle of performance, human performance, man. Some of these guys can like take 100 kilo weight, bench press that thing for like a set of 30, 40. And then they can also run like I don't even know what's impressive, a 100-meter sprint, like 10 seconds. To be able to have the strength to do what they do in the gym and then also run fast, I think that is the perfect blend. Over the last few years, I've kind of not done any cardio whatsoever, and that's because I wanted to get stronger at the squat, deadlift, bench, all that stuff. In terms of walking, I do plenty of walking at work, man. Some days we some guys have those watches and whatever, and sometimes they do like 10Ks at work, 12-hour shift. So I do plenty of walking. I don't regard walking as exercise. Walking is like life. It doesn't really challenge all too many systems at all. It's kind of like that low, stress kind of cardio. I don't particularly like to do that. Probably a few years ago, definitely before the squat every day, or maybe, I was in the squat every day. We used to go to this local hill, mountain, whatever you want to call it. Mount Lofty here in Adelaide, and we used to walk it like once a week, and that is a crazy bit of exercise. It's kind of walking, but there's freaking steep sections. It's kind of like hiking, really. Really burns you out. That's kind of what I would want to do. I don't know how I'd fit into it. Squatting every day dominates everything, man. Like, this idea of getting stronger in the squat and the deadlift has kind of consumed my thoughts when it comes to physical exercise. So I don't really have much effort left to do anything else, really. If I had all the time in the world, hell yeah, man, I would be doing all sorts of things. But the little bit of time that I have in a day for exercise, I devote it to the barbell. So I wish I could do more cardio. However, in terms of cardiovascular health, I don't know, man. Like, if you do a big squat routine or a set of 50, man, you are huffing and puffing for a very, very long time. It is very, very high stress on the cardiovascular system. The typical powerlifting program where guys are doing 5x5 and taking like 15 minutes in between sets, that is not cardiovascular stressing at all. But if you are, doing some of these sets that I'm talking about, high reps, they are very, very taxing. Very, very taxing. Even if you like doing a set of 20 of Hindu squats and you take like 2 minutes in between, you're breathing, you're burning up. Not to say that can be measured against anything that I ever did, back in the day when I had like 5K, runs that I used to do and track the time for that in the off season. That was a completely different type of, 1 rep max kind of thing. But yeah, I don't really have any goals that are cardio orientated. Maybe down the track I will, as I continue to kind of age, maybe I'll get into marathon running or something like that. I'm not sure. Right now, it's all about the squat, man. But yeah, I often think about cardiovascular health, and this is where like the whole high reps idea comes in, because that type of training modality kind of caters to the cardiovascular much more than the stuff that we typically concern ourselves with when it comes to strength training. Then we have Balint. Hopefully I said that correctly, man. I always think to myself, man, am I butchering these people's names? Balint. Hopefully I said that correctly. Hey Van, have you ever used or thought of incorporating plyometric exercises into your routine? Similar to what the previous question from Steven, man. You know, the only thing I ever used to do back in the day when I played basketball was do a lot of running so I can have the wind for basketball. And also I did plyometric type stuff. The first ever plyometric type thing that I ever did was a program called Air Alert. I don't know whether you guys remember this program. I don't know if you guys ever heard of it. It was basically like a vertical jump program, and you would kind of do a lot of stuff like calf raises, different types of calf raises, jumping from a box and then jumping up again, lots of step ups onto chairs, lunges, jumps from lunges, that kind of thing. So like that is my only experience with plyometrics. Plyometrics is it's a different beast, man. Plyometrics is, I don't know, man. I don't know if it's suited to somebody like me. You know, it doesn't seem like you're doing much, but the stress on the system is huge because of the forces involved. I don't know, man. Like ever since I've stopped playing basketball, I feel like my joints, ankles particularly, man, probably knees and hips, I don't think they're, built for that type of sport anymore. Like quick changes of direction, jumping up and down. Like I feel like I have a lot of mass on my body right now compared to what I had, at 75, 80 kilos back during the basketball days. So I reckon if I played basketball now, man, like I'll be scared about the stuff that you can't train with a barbell, man. Like change of direction, getting knocked while you're running. Like I feel like I would just roll my ankles now, man, because I don't have those nerves. Have forgotten about basketball. So oftentimes, like in the last few years, maybe I've played basketball like probably the last 5 years, maybe once, a proper pick-up game. And like I still watch basketball, I still think about basketball. That's my favorite sport. But you go out there and you feel so freaking clumsy, man. And so, I don't know, man. But this is where you got to draw the line somewhere. You can't have too many goals, man. You can't spread yourself that far across, even with this Olympic weightlifting stuff that I've recently done, and I haven't done it for the last like 2-3 weeks, basically, if not longer. You kind of get caught up in all these different goals, and it's like, man, like I can't do everything. Like Olympic weightlifting is just as a sport consumes so much time. It's high technicality, high skill. Plyometrics is another thing, and how do you like periodize all this stuff? How do you mesh everything together? It will be very, very difficult, and I feel like if you were to do everything a little bit, then you would just be mediocre at everything. Sam Krug. Oh, what have I done here? Sam Krug. I must have chopped up your question. I think there was a previous question to Sam. So what I've done here is I've taken snippets of Discord and I've sent it to my wife's phone, and I'm reading these questions off my wife's phone. I feel like I haven't included previous Sam's question, because Sam goes, actually, I have a second question if you don't mind. I'm a younger guy, only 17. I want to avoid injury. I don't have the ability to read my body nearly as well as you can. Are there any indicators I should pay attention to aside from obvious stuff like pain? Discomfort, overtraining, harming the body. Generally, I don't feel it in the moment. Oh man, I reckon I've actually answered this question before. So the Q&A question channel that I have on Discord has come up a little bit busy. Like guys are having conversations, and I kind of must have gotten confused because there was a lot of stuff going on. It wasn't just... So Sam, I'm sorry, I probably answered it last week actually. Adam G says, hey Van, you mentioned in one of your vids after doing high rep squats and destroying the whole box of cookies that you mostly just eat what the wife makes. I wonder if you track any of your macros. It sucks big time to miss out on strength, muscle gains after killing yourself in the gym and ending up not getting enough protein. feels like such an easy thing to do to reap tons of rewards. You always talk about the puzzle in the gym, but I feel like the proper diet is 50% of the work. 50% of the work. You got to work out the dietary puzzle too. Man, of course, absolutely. The dietary side is it's important. I'm not going to say it's not important, but I don't have the same passion that I have, you know, for squats. I don't have the same thing for the kitchen and the diet. You know, there was a time probably 5-6 years ago where I looked into diet a lot, and it wasn't just on the basis of what's the best fuel for my body. It was also the ethical, the moral side. Should we be killing and eating animals? Should we be eating this, that, the other? Is meat bad? What's bad cholesterol, HDL, LDL, all this sort of stuff? And basically, man, like, just like, I guess, strength training, there is a freaking camp for every single idea. There is a professor, an expert, a guy that's written 50 billion PhD reports that says meat is good. And then on the other side of the table, you have a guy who says meat will give you cancer and you will die. What's your protein intake? High protein intake will cause mutations in your genome and you will get cancer. How much protein can you absorb? How good are carbs? Which fats to eat? Honestly, man, I am so fatigued in my mind from reading that stuff, from being exposed to all that stuff. I just feel like we don't know what the hell is going on. There are so many industries in this world who fund research studies and basically make you write stuff that they want to hear. You know, case in point, the freaking, oh man, should I even go into this? I don't know if I should go into this. Years and years ago in the 70s, there was a really, really smart fella who went on and said, high fat intake will give you atherosclerosis, it will give you thickening vessels of the heart, it will give you heart attacks and strokes. Don't eat fat, fat is bad. So then people went on hating fat. Low fat this, low fat that, no fat this, no fat that. It's come full 360 after 30 freaking years, and people have looked into some of these studies that he's done, that he referenced, and he basically picked and chose the stats that he wanted to use for his rhetoric. It was all bullshit. Fat does not give you fat in your veins. It is idiotic to think that. Now it seems to me that carbs are the ones to blame. Glycation. I'm not an expert at the science or the biochemistry of all of this, but sugar and frequency of insulin release on a graph seems to be the culprit. Snacking, eating 5-6 meals a day is bad. Fasting seems to be good. When you fast, especially when you get to the 16th hour, all sorts of things happen. How deep do I want to get to this? All these ideas that I've looked up before, and I linked it with my clinical understanding of biology and pathophysiology and physiology, seems to me that carbs and frequency of diet is the thing to blame. Your body needs to rest. You can't always be in digestion. This is why sometimes I fast. This is why sometimes I use a night shift to fast. Fasting is very, very good. I could go on and on and on about this. But essentially, while you're fasting, your body can go into all sorts of different states. Cancer cells die in a major fast. Your body goes into like a cleanse. Glucose and insulin exist together. If you go a long time, like 16 hours, if you can, I think the thing is 16 hours, if you don't eat anything by 16 hours, I'm trying to think of that hormone that we give at work for people that are having a hypo. I don't know why. It's not glycogen. It's escaped me. I don't know. I can't think of the drug that we give. It's actually a hormone in the body. that we give basically gets released at the 16th hour of fasting, and with it, all these other good things happen. It's a whole cascade that kind of gets activated at the 16-hour fast. Basically, in the presence of insulin, you have anabolic. Insulin is anabolic, meaning that you are putting on, you are taking stuff from the vessels into the cells, right? It's anabolic. When you get rid of insulin, you get rid of all of the stuff which basically cause our machine to work, and you're going to repair. So fasting is very, very good. The long way around this question is, have I thought about diet? Do I care about diet? I do, but I also get triggered, I get antagonized by some of these thoughts about what is actually healthy. What is healthy? Cramming too much protein in your diet, I don't know if it's good. Eating 5,000 calories, I don't know if it's good. The bottom line, the bottom kind of thought that I have after saying all of this and kind of touching all these different things, and I'm not really explaining a lot of things, but this is worthy of a whole video, is that I use my expenditure to dictate my intake. So I don't force feed. I don't try to do wonderful things with my diet. I don't try to get X amount of protein. I do my training and I sort of eat to what I crave. I know that's like a weird thing to say, but you know, in the animal kingdom, I don't know whether you guys are familiar with this. I'm not an expert at this, but my understanding is that we are kind of the dumbest animals on the planet, in the sense of we don't crave nutrients. We don't actually know what we need to eat. But sometimes we do crave a little bit. So like a lion will kill an animal and he will go eat the kidney or the liver or the heart or something like that, which is kind of dense in certain nutrients. We don't have that. We just eat. Oh, I'm hungry. There's a hole here. Let's fill it. So I kind of, depending on how I train and depending on what I do, when I do high rep stuff, I get really, really hungry. So I tend to eat more carbs. If I don't do high rep stuff and I'm not all that hungry, I try to kind of eat more protein, a bit more salad. That's kind of how I think about it. I don't count calories. I don't think our body's dumb. So if you have gone through hell in the gym, your body's not going to just not have appetite. It's not. A lot of us think that we need to consume X amount of food, but really you just have to eat to what you have spent. That's how I think about it, because on the bottom of all of this, I think health, man. I think health. There are all these diseases that I come across through my work, man. Like, I don't know, man. Like irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's, all these inflammatory kind of like diseases of the bowel, man, which get triggered by certain nutrients, certain chemicals. And I always think to myself, man, how about all of us just take a freaking break? We are constantly eating. This whole idea of eating cereal in the morning, that shit like leaves you before you even wash the damn plate, man. It's such a, you're eating nothing. It's like, and then you got to eat again like 2 hours later, and then again you have to digest something, again you have to digest something, again you have to digest. Your body's always digesting and the bowels get pissed off, everything gets. I believe in fasting. It's a freaking rant and a half, but overall, when I think about food, I mostly think about eat clean and healthy balance, and then I also think about fasting. I want to have a fast somewhere. I don't like this idea of just constantly thinking about calories, constantly feeding. I think a lot of goodness happens in fasting. Anyway, I'll beat around the bush there like a madman, but hopefully you kind of get the idea where I'm coming from. What do we have next? Pad says, have you ever experimented with rest times? It's amazing how different weight sets can feel with different rest times. Absolutely, man. It's changes everything, man. Changes absolutely everything. If you're interested in metabolic conditioning, this is one of the elements, this is one of the modalities you can use in your training. One of the pillars can be rest times. You just basically cut your rest time down, and all of a sudden you're working your conditioning, you're working your fitness. I've always concerned myself with strength, and I feel like if I don't rest enough in between sets and I go into a set, I'm half done and my performance in that set is going to be suffering. So I give myself plenty of rest, so then I can give everything to the set. I also think lifting heavy weight, when you are not fully rested and your diaphragm is bouncing around up and down, you are risking injury, because the diaphragm is a key component to your brace. So be very, very careful with that. If you're doing something like a set of 50 and the weight's light and it doesn't take a lot of bracing, then I don't think it's a major thing. it's kind of like metabolic conditioning in a way. But rest time is very, very potent, depending on what your goal is. Kevin Don says, can we get a video looking at your training log? It will be interesting to see how you log your days. Kevin, a whole bunch of people have asked me to do this. I guess I could find a page or two that I could kind of take a photo of. But for the most part, I don't like showing my log because there's a lot of stuff in there that I kind of write. It's kind of like a diary, man. You know, I write all sorts of stuff in there. It's not just, you know, training. It's also like, you know, personal stuff as well. It's not like a diary that I don't want to make it sound like it's all fantasy stuff, like my deep desires and feelings. It's not like that. It's just there's some stuff that I sometimes put birthdays in, like if my kid has a birthday, happy birthday, you know, and all these different ideas I'll put in there. So it's not kind of like, I don't want to make it public, you know, it's kind of a private thing for me. Roots Bay, what do you think about starting strength for beginners? I've found success in the past for improving weighted dips and pull-ups. My legs are weakest point and need some feedback for ATG strength. I can do heavy on pin squats fine, but as soon as I hit depth on ATG, I feel my back wants to arch and produce butt wink, which makes me hesitant to lift heavy to avoid injury. Do you think I need to strengthen my core and hit 45 hypers to help combat arching? Maybe you mean butt wink. Mind you, I was taught to arch my lower back to squat, so I'm still retaining my body to have a flat back. Few things there. What do I think about starting strength for beginners, man? That's kind of where I started as well, man. You know, starting strength 5x5, that kind of thing. It's not bad, you know, especially if you don't have any understanding of training. I think it's a good template to kind of start. You talk about weighted dips and pull-ups. My legs are my weakest point. Need some feedback for ATG strength. So ATG strength, man, is, you know, if you're used to squatting to parallel, ATG is another level, right? Obviously, every level of the squat calls for different muscles or different loading of muscles. So I've spoken about this in the past. The first kind of like 45 degrees as you're coming from the top and you kind of go to this angle of the femur, that's kind of like external rotation. So glutes, quads, that kind of thing. When you get to parallel, it's hip internal rotation. Hip internal rotation is a whole host of things, and it involves a whole bunch of things. You know, the main hip internal rotators, glute med, TFL, and glute med, those are kind of like the main hip internal rotators. Like even if you just like kick your leg out, you'll feel the lateral hip kind of engage. If you stop there and you come back up, you're kind of going external rotation, internal rotation, external rotation, done. If you're going all the way to ATG, you're going external rotation, let's say from here, then you go to internal rotation, and then when your femur drops below, like, you know, your ass is all the way down, you go back into external rotation. But the external rotators, which are responsible for the bottom, are not the same as the top. At the bottom of the squat, man, your glutes are kind of like mechanically disadvantaged. They're not in a good leverage spot to produce strength, to act upon the levers in this position. Like it's really, really deep a squat. They don't have, it's physics, right? They can't exert as much force as you'd think. What does the external rotation or the hip extension portion of the squat in the whole is the adductors. This is where the adductors come in and dominate. If you feel insecurity at the bottom of the squat, ATG portion, two things are happening. The adductors are weak, or you have never trained them and you gotta ease into depth. So shave the weight off the bar all the way back to a certain level. You feel comfortable, spend some time in the ATG, spend some time, pause squats. That's beautiful. Keep doing that. And over time, you will address everything you need. If you want to supplement an exercise on top of just doing pause squats with, you know, lighter weights and getting volume in that, you have to think about your core. So the core is like, includes everything, right? Some people call the core from here freaking all the way down to your kneecaps, man. What I refer to the core is kind of like below the ribs on both sides. So below the ribs, you got the, you know, rectus abdominis, obliques, internal obliques, external obliques, and also you got the back. So if you want to have a flat back in a deep hip flex position, you obviously need to have long hip extensors, so hamstrings, adductors, and glutes. They need to be long and strong. I've spoken about this before. It's kind of like it's hard to grasp this idea of having something really strong and long. I once heard somebody say a strong muscle is a long muscle, a weak muscle is a short muscle. So if you're struggling to kind of keep your integrity of the lower back, two things are happening. You're no longer strong in the posterior chain, and two, your hip flexors, mainly your iliacus and your psoas, are not strong enough to pull the spine in. So if you look at the anatomy of hip flexors, psoas, iliopsoas, you will know they originate from T12 to L5, so they kind of fan out from there, from each of those vertebrae, and they set into the femur. So when you go straight into a deep position, they need to be pulling together, otherwise you will have this. If they start pulling and they're really, really strong, you will have this. It's not just the erectors that are going on. You are just not erecting. You're actually pulling your lower back towards your belly button. See, this is slouching. This is me using the hip flexors, right? So if you are struggling in the bottom, it's really easy, man. You have a really weak core. You have a weak set of psoas muscles, iliacus, probably even a rectus femoris, the quad muscle, and you are probably really, really tight in the posterior chain because you haven't been going down into the squat full depth. So, the law of specificity, start doing it, man. Even if it's a freaking empty barbell, get down, do it. Stretch those posterior muscles, sit in a hole. Even if you have to start kind of like a wider stance, spread your knees apart, spread your feet apart, sit in the hole, let those adductors, hamstrings, glutes release, and then squat. So each rep that you're doing is a stretch and a contraction, stretch, contraction, stretch, contraction. And then eventually you can kind of bring your feet in more and more and more. A lot of people think it's all got to do with the ankles. I don't believe it's the ankles, man. Like, I feel like if you are rounding at the bottom of the squat, you don't need more dorsiflexion. I always felt like it's the hips. And people will always disagree with me about this because the obvious thing that you see somebody squatting, the hips are not, the ankles are not good. Sure, if you put stilettos, if I take my wife's stilettos with freaking heels this big, you can squat nicely. But that is all knees. How strong are we going to be with just all knees? You need hips. So you need the hips to be in a hip flex position. Whereas if you just put stilettos, your spine is going to be fully vertical and you might get to like 90 degrees hip flexion because your knees are going to the next room. And that's how you're making up for the depth. So if you want to be strong in an ATG position, I feel like you also need to have acute angles of the hip. And to achieve that, you simply need to release the posterior chain and get it stronger. Also release it at the same time. And also work on your belly. Work on your belly, work on your lower back. Hypers are good. But stuff like hanging leg raises, marching, split squats, that kind of stuff that challenges the hip flexor complex. Wide stance squats, as I did yesterday, beat the hell out of me, wide stance squats, man. Like, I couldn't believe how dominant wide stances are on hip flexors. That's where I would start, man. Now, fellas, I feel like I've missed a whole bunch of questions. So in the next week, I'm going to try and go back and work out exactly what I've missed. But yeah, so try to keep that channel, the Q&A questions channel, purely just questions. I think a lot of you guys want to comment and reply to the fellas that are asking the questions, but it just makes it hard for me to kind of filter through all this stuff. So, but anyway, next week I'll try and tidy it up a little bit and see what I've missed. So if I missed your questions, I apologize. Hopefully I get it next time. All right, guys, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.